Today, I'm very pleased to welcome Juan Verde, former U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Trade, man who has been a senior trade official working in the Obama administration and a veteran of many campaigns. Juan, good to have you with us.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Let me start by talking about trade. You have been very active on this front. You were the man in charge of relations with economic relations and trade with Europe during the Obama administration. Now, you are a member of the National Finance Committee for the Biden campaign, although I understand you're speaking in a personal capacity here. But do you believe that a Biden presidency would return to a policy of trade peace rather than trade war with Europe and of a recommitment to the multilateral trading system?
Well, to say the least, the current situation, it's quite concerning. We had a pretty strong bilateral trade and economic relationship between the United States and Europe for decades and decades. Right before this administration took over, there was a formal agreement which was going to be ratified to implement a free trade agreement between the United States and Europe. It doesn't make any sense for, two of the strongest allies in the world not to work side by side. The multilateral trade system is what makes most sense in order for both the United States and Europe to remain competitive in the 21st century. I think everyone understands that. Something close to 62% of the trade between the United States and Europe is intercompany trade, which basically means these are companies on both sides of the Atlantic that are trading within their companies, whether it's sending parts from Europe to the United States or vice versa.
Another point that's been delicate in U.S.-European relations during the Trump years has been NATO. President Trump recently unilaterally announced the withdrawal of a large number of U.S. troops from Germany without even telling the Germans in advance. Is that something you think Joe Biden would agree with?
I think that November 3rd would be extremely important, not just for what happens back in the United States, but I think, in my personal opinion, it's going to be crucial as to what happens between the United States and Europe. Vice President Biden, if he becomes president of the United States in November, we'll see a new era of greater cooperation, of greater understanding. Perhaps we'll set the clock back 4 years and try to be where we were after the Obama administration, where both Europe and the United States were working very, very closely, and not just on economic and trade issues, but even when it comes to NATO. The fact that the United States is making unilateral decisions that affect NATO and that affect our relationship, it's quite concerning. It's not the right message.
I guess the other thing that shocks Europeans is the United States under Trump having withdrawn from the World Health Organization, from the Paris Climate Accords. Again, would you expect a Biden presidency would restore U.S. membership in the World Health Organization and a U.S. commitment to climate science?
A Biden presidency, in my opinion, will make sure that common sense dictates foreign policy. I think Biden understands that global threats such as the coronavirus or a pandemic, but perhaps more importantly, climate change, require global solutions, require greater cooperation and collaboration. In a Biden presidency, we'll see a return to, again, common sense and greater collaboration when it comes to the multilateral entities.
Finally, there's the issue of COVID, where Europe took prudent measures and has flattened the curve. And instead, in America, Trump has stopped federal financing for federal testing centers, has suggested to Americans they might want to ingest disinfectants, and has generally been accused of mismanaging the COVID crisis. What's your take?
It is no coincidence that there are 4 nations in the world where coronavirus is being felt the most when it comes to number of cases and also, unfortunately, when it comes to the number of deaths. These countries are Brazil, Mexico, the United States, and within Europe, the UK. All four of those nations have a common denominator, and that is that they are led by people that first did not believe in scientific evidence, did not listen to the scientific community, took a long time to react, and in the case of Donald Trump in the United States, have chosen to inject division and confusion, in my opinion, about what needs to be done. And I think to a large extent, what's happening in the United States has everything to do with a lack of clear leadership coming from the White House.
People in Europe have been very distressed to see the social unrest and violence and racism in America in the period following George Floyd's murder in Minneapolis. What should our European friends be thinking about what's going on in America?
There are three current crises merging at once in the United States. We have a health crisis, we have an economic crisis, and we have a social unrest crisis. This is extremely important because it is extremely important to mention it because for millions of Americans, this race war and their current situation, it's something that should not be taken lightly. The United States needs to face its demons.
You've been an outspoken activist on the environment, on social entrepreneurship, and on sustainability. What's your opinion of prospects for a Green New Deal in the United States and even in Europe?
Despite the fact that we are going into what will probably be the worst economic recession we have ever seen, or at least in the last 100 years, we should all be extremely optimistic because it represents a unique opportunity when it comes to what is being called across both ends of the Atlantic, the new Green Deal. Whether we like it or not, we'll have to invest trillions of dollars in the reconstruction and stimulus packages, both in Europe and the United States. And this is a unique opportunity to make sure that the economic recovery plans incorporate sustainability as a driving force. When we do that, we are promoting technological advancements. We are talking about entrepreneurship, and we're talking about solutions that should create jobs and economic prosperity, while at the same time addressing a greater global threat, which is climate change.
Juan Verde, thank you for taking the time today.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.